Everything your morning should be.
Let's do it! Let's go!
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
He thinks he actually won in 2020, and there's no evidence, zero evidence that he did.
I ran twice, I won twice, and did much better the second time than I did the first.
Former President Trump has been encouraging GOP lawmakers in Pennsylvania to repeal Act 77, which allows all voters in the state to cast ballots by mail.
We had a free and fair, safe and secure election here in Pennsylvania in 2020, and we will again in 2022.
Republicans are doubling down on their MAGA trickle-down economics.
President Biden there with a new Democratic talking point. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns, coming to you from our Washington bureau. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight just 15 days into those critical midterm elections, and candidates in multiple states will face off for debates this week, including in that key Pennsylvania Senate race. And the Keystone State is where we find our CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent and Pennsylvania's own Robert Costa, who joins us now from the state capitol in Harrisburg. Bob, good to see you out on the trail. Thanks for being here. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of this new reporting about former President Trump potentially contesting or questioning the results in Pennsylvania already. Tell us a little bit more about your reporting.
Good evening, Caitlin. So good to be with you. You're right. I am a native Pennsylvanian. And like all native Pennsylvanians today, I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan back in the World Series. But tonight I'm here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the state capital, a beautiful state capital right behind me. And the talk of the town is former President Trump, an ally of the gubernatorial nominee, Doug Mastriano, an ally of the Senate Republican nominee, Mehmet Oz, intervening in Pennsylvania's election law, holding a meeting in September of this year, just a few weeks ago, with allies about repealing what's called Act 77. In brief, it's the mail-in voting law in Pennsylvania. Trump is telling his Republican allies in Pennsylvania to overturn it in some way, to seek a constitutional amendment. I spoke with the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Democrat Josh Shapiro, the gubernatorial nominee for his party, earlier today about Trump.
Our mail-in voting law was passed with more Republican support than Democratic support. In fact, my opponent was for it until Donald Trump told him he had to be against it. Vote by mail has been used by millions of Pennsylvanians, Republican and Democrat.
As Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, said, this Act 77 had widespread support when it was passed a few years ago, but it has become a focal point for the Trump movement in Pennsylvania that is now deeply aligned against mail-in voting in this state. You see now the gubernatorial contest between Shapiro and Mastriano has a pretty wide gap. Shapiro has won over many moderate Republicans in the area where I grew up, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, the so-called collar counties around Philadelphia. But all eyes, Caitlin, are on that Senate race, the debate, the first and only one in the contest here tomorrow night, Tuesday night, in Harrisburg. Democrat John Fetterman faces off against Republican Mehmet Oz.
Yeah, Bob, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that because you're there and will be covering that debate. And I think what's so interesting about Pennsylvania is that you have this governor's race happening, but the Senate race is very, very close and one that everybody around the country is watching. Can you kind of give us a sense of how this race has maybe changed and tightened in recent days?
This is a race that is the center of attention for both parties. This could be a 50-50 Senate. It could lean one way or the other, and it might come down to Pennsylvania. In recent days, Caitlin, as you've been traveling the country, I've been traveling around here in Pennsylvania, talking to voters, spent the weekend in State College, home of Penn State, and I asked voters what's on their mind, and it's evident that in the Senate race, top of mind is the economy, inflation, high prices on fuel and food. Another big issue here in Pennsylvania, and you see it in the advertising, crime. People feel unsafe in some of the cities around this state, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and elsewhere. And you have the issue of health. That has come to the fore in some respects in recent months following the stroke of John Fetterman earlier this year. Fetterman and his doctor have said he is fine. He's recovering. He will use closed captioning during the debate on Tuesday night.
Yeah, Bob, all eyes will be on that one and only debate ahead of that critical Senate race. We're glad you're there covering it for us. Thanks so much for your reporting.
Thank you.
And to discuss President Biden's messaging before the midterms, we bring in CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang, who joins us now. Hey, Weijia, so Biden was also in Pennsylvania recently, which gives you a sense of just how critical that state is to Democrats' hopes at keeping the Senate. But Biden's also been kind of talking a little bit about, unveiling a new message. I want to play some sound about what Biden's been saying over recent days.
It's mega, MAGA trickle down. You have what I call the mega, MAGA Republicans. Republicans are doubling down on their mega, MAGA trickle down economics that benefits the very wealthy, failed the country before, and will fail it again if they win.
All right, so mega, MAGA messaging, say that 3 times fast. What's Biden essentially trying to signal here?
So for weeks now, we have seen a very clear strategy from President Biden, which is to focus on his accomplishments, to focus on the agenda items that he has been able to tick off in the first 2 years, rather than headlining these massive rallies that previous presidents have tended to do. But now we are seeing a shift. We are seeing sharper rhetoric. We are seeing him present a choice to voters. He has said many times in the past few days that, if you do choose Republicans, ask yourselves what their plan is compared to mine when it comes to the economy. And that's why we keep hearing this phrase, mega, MAGA, trickle. You're right, I can't even say it once. Mega, MAGA, trickle down. I think, this is an example of some self-awareness, too, because the GOP has gone so strongly on the president, on his economic plans, on inflation, on whether or not people are better off financially than 2 years ago. And so the White House is saying, okay, or President Biden, I should say, is saying, okay, that may be true, but look at the alternative. Look at the other plans that are out there from Republicans, and is that what you really want as an alternative? So I think, with so little time between now and Election Day, we can expect this sort of, punchier language to ramp up as he focuses more on drawing a contrast between him and Republicans, between Democrats and Republicans, rather than just focusing on his agenda.
Yeah, Weijia, it's really interesting because, when you are the president of the party in power with low approval ratings, it's not as if you are getting all sorts of invites from people around the country running for office wanting you to come. But it is interesting to see former President Obama being deployed and launched on the trail. I believe we have a map of all the places that he is going over the next week or so ahead of the midterms. He seems to be someone that candidates want to appear with him and not so much Biden at this point. Do we have a sense of, first, where Biden might be deployed, where he wants to go, where he may go, and also, how a former president and Obama could be an asset, apparently, according to this schedule, to Democrats?
So President Biden claims that he has been invited by more than a dozen candidates to stump with them, especially in the coming days. And the White House was specifically asked about this during today's press briefing. And the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, would not commit to any states or dates or timelines for where the president may or may not be. But surely we can expect that he will appear in states that he hasn't yet. There are several states in which there are very tight races that he has not had a big presence in. Arizona, Wisconsin, even North Carolina could be one. So, as the elections approach, I think that his travel schedule will ramp up. But you're absolutely right, Caitlin. As of now, he hasn't really been out there with candidates, and that is by design because, frankly, you can't run away from the fact that, his approval ratings seem to be stuck at 40%, may have dipped in some polls. And I think that they are aware of that maybe he's not the best messenger right now to try to rally people and get excitement together. That is exactly why he's focused so much on the issues, right? On things that he says he has done, that he is doing to make lives better for people. But when you have someone who is just naturally charismatic, like former President Obama, it's not really surprising that he's been invited sort of in place of President Biden because, historically he has been able to excite the base to make sure people turn out for the vote and perhaps even change some minds of undecided voters between now and then.
Yeah, especially in a midterm election when it's all about turning out your base of support and giving them something to turn out for. Weijia Jiang, as always, thank you so much. Good to see you.
You too.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that she's confident her party will maintain control after the elections. But we'll check in with a few political watchers to ask if that optimism is just some wishful thinking. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme.
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
Every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go! CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
We feel very confident. I've been in over 20 states since Congress adjourned in the last month or so, and I see very clearly that the ownership of the ground is with us. It's about getting out the vote. Everything else is a conversation compared to that.
That was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi speaking yesterday with Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. She says that she's confident about the midterms with only 15 days left until Election Day. But our polling numbers tell a different story. The CBS News Battleground Tracker is estimating that her party, the Democrats, will lose control of the House. So for more, I want to bring in Ashley Etienne and Brendan Buck. Ashley is a CBS News political contributor and former communications director for both Vice President Kamala Harris and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And Brendan is former communications director for Paul Ryan and currently a partner at 7 Letter, a Washington communications firm. Great to see you both. Thanks for being here. Ashley, I want to start with you. I don't think that anybody could accuse Nancy Pelosi of being naive, given that she's been around politics for a long time. But is she being realistic here, or is she risking, with this message, getting Democrats to get complacent?
No, listen, I'm always voting and betting with the speaker. I mean, she's the best vote counter that we've ever seen in Congress. I mean, the point that she actually made, which you didn't run in that tape, that I thought was sort of the most important point, which is there won't be a red wave. We will not see a red wave this election. When Trump lost, when we won the House back in 2018, we won and with a record number 41 seats. 41 seats. Now, you look at the CBS poll, Republicans might have a 6-seat majority. And I think that really speaks to the speaker's point, how competitive these seats are. The polls are tightening. Early vote is up, which usually favors Democrats. And to her point, we usually own the ground. So you combine a sort of a strong ground game with this incredible story about how people's lives have changed in the past 2 years since Biden has been president. And I think to her point, that puts us in a really, really competitive position.
But a 6-seat win is still a majority. I mean, Democrats just need to lose a few seats, really, and Republicans win control. I mean, that seems likely.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. But I think we were anticipating a much bigger margin. And so the fact that we're talking about 6 seats and not 41 seats, I think, again, speaks to where the Americans' sentiments are about what the president's been able to accomplish, about the future, how optimistic they feel about the future. But it also, I think, to some degree, suggests that the polls aren't completely accurate. I mean, I don't overinvest in polls. There was never a poll that ever said that Donald Trump was actually going to win the presidency, and he did. So I just think that there's still. The Democrats remain very competitive, and there's still room to move even that 6-point margin to tighten it even more so.
Brendan, I want to bring you in here. Republicans have a very favorable environment that they're running in right now, especially with the president's approval rating stuck kind of around the 40s. Do Republicans have to offer an affirmative message, or do you think that they can kind of get away with and win enough seats with, we're not the Democrats, and kind of using the historic trends in their favor? Or do you think that they have to come up with something, and what is that?
Well, I will note that they did put out an agenda a few months ago, but if history is a guide, you don't have to really run on a positive agenda. I mean, every midterm election since I've been around has been a referendum on the president, and this looks like this one is shaping up to be one as well. That's the deal. When you're in power, especially when you have full control of government, as Democrats do now, people are going to judge you based on the results, and I don't think they are liking the results that they see. And at this moment, it may not be that Republicans win 41 seats, but it's very likely that they're going to have a very big night. They probably won't win 41 because they already have a lot. As you noted, they only need to win 5. Democrats may have won 41 in 2018, but that's because they had a much longer way to go. Republicans actually gained seats in 2020 when Democrats were very confident that they were going to win some back. Like you said, it really comes down to the environment. This should not be a close election. Based on the president's approval, based on the economy, based on history. This should not be a close election. And I think that's finally what you're seeing here in the last few months. It's all normalizing. There was a lot of back and forth for many months. Democrats had some good months, but now it's settled. People are voting. And the election, let's keep in mind, it's not 2 weeks from now. The election is right now. People are voting. And I don't have a lot of good news to offer my Democratic friends about anywhere you can look to find good news.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Brendan, that people are voting, so Election Day has already begun. I do want to ask you both about this kind of key group that I've been really keeping an eye on, and we've been keeping an eye on here at CBS. We've kind of divided voters into 4 groups, and one of them is this group of pressured parents. These are people who have been feeling the policies of the pandemic, but also the economic effects and so much that has gone with it. I want to play a little bit of sound that we have from this focus group that we saw on Face the Nation over the weekend and get your thoughts on the other side.
Biggest concerns about raising children in America right now. John?
We should be pushing the actual school studies, math, social studies, science, not, gender studies.
You can teach them one thing at home, but when they go to school, they're just as much influenced by their teachers and their surroundings. And we should have more input, the parents, of what we want them to learn.
I agree. The other issue has to do with COVID. There's less teachers in the school district.
So, Ashley, I'll start with you, and we only have about 90 seconds left, but just really quickly, what is your reaction to this, and how can Democrats speak to these voters from a variety of different views who are all saying essentially the same thing, that they just don't feel good about where things are right now?
Well, listen, I might be one of those pressured parents, but I can say I'm happy that my kid's in school. When the president took over, 54% of the schools were closed. We had no infrastructure to get shots in arms. So there's a lot of progress that's happened. I do believe that to your point and what CBS has uncovered and what those voters spoke to is really a sense of uncertainty that exists among the electorate about where we're headed next. Have we fully solved these problems? It feels like every time you turn around, there's a new variant. Will my kids be in school? So there's a lot of outstanding questions, which I think, to your point, is putting voters and especially parents in a really tough spot. So in terms of what I think is a compelling message for those voters, I would just look at myself as an example and say, hey, listen, I think we need to lay out the case again, how people's lives have changed in the past 2 years. I think my major concern, though, is that we're not really making that case full-throatedly. Like, we're not sending out all of our assets to actually do that. The president's, I think, done three trips this year so far in recent months, compared to Trump, who had done 13 or 14. Obama had done double digits by this point as well, too. That's the thing that concerns me most. It's not that we don't have a compelling story to assuage some of these concerns that parents are having. We do. But the question is, are we meeting them where they are? Are we, meeting them with compelling messengers, and are we speaking really to their main concerns and really laying out the future for them?
And Brendan, this group seems ripe for the Republicans' argument, especially trying to get those voters back that they lost in 2018.
And this is where you first saw the first signs that this election was heading towards Republicans. These issues were front and center in the Virginia governor's race, and it just speaks to the level of anxiety that exists in the country. And the fact that people don't think Democrats are focused on the issues that they really care about. There are big, important issues like climate change and like voting rights, but those aren't the things that your average voter is thinking about day to day. When they see Democrats so worked up on those issues and not focused on things that matter to them in their day-to-day life, of course, like the economy and inflation, you're going to lose them. They just don't feel like you're in touch with them. And I think that's one of the biggest stories of this election, a party in power that seemed like it wasn't as closely focused on the issues that average voters care about in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, voters in battleground states keep telling us when we're out on the trail that things just feel really hard right now. Ashley and Brendan, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
His tapes once took down a presidency. Now, Bob Woodward is releasing recordings of interviews with former President Trump. What we're learning from them next. You're streaming Red and Blue.
Thinking about it. Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Trump was the wrong man for the job. I realize now, 2 years later, all of the January 6th insurrection leads me to the conclusion that he's not just the wrong man for the job, but he's dangerous. And he is a threat to democracy.
That was veteran Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward discussing the former president with John Dickerson on CBS Sunday Morning. Woodward is releasing a new audiobook called The Trump Tapes, which contains all 20 of his one-on-one interviews with Mr. Trump. And CBS News chief political analyst and senior national correspondent John Dickerson joins me now. Hey, John, good to see you. That was a really fascinating interview. I'm wondering what stood out to you from these tapes.
Well, what stands out is you get a sense of the pace and rhythm and clockworks of former President Trump's mind. And that's different than reading it on the page or having someone tell you about it or hearing him at a rally. This is a kind of talking and a way of thinking and talking that President Trump didn't engage in or that we didn't hear much. And then also it's a map of the presidency because a lot of the things we take for granted in the presidency, Donald Trump didn't take for granted. And so it is a way of looking at the office through this very different kind of occupant that was in it for 4 years in the Trump administration.
Yeah, John, I thought it was really interesting when you kind of pointed this out with Bob Woodward, that Trump seemed to see the presidency as a possession.
He saw it as a possession, and on the one hand, that was one of his great strengths, to the extent that the job of the presidency matched up with his sense of himself and what he thought he was good at. But the presidency is a much more vast office than that. And that is where Woodward argues it comes into such conflict with the singular personal focus of Donald Trump, that you cannot run a presidency as a singular thing. It's a job that it's an organization. The presidency is an act of teamwork. And Donald Trump doesn't think that way. And that is, according to Woodward, a fatal flaw. And what you hear in these tapes is Woodward constantly trying to get former President Trump to reckon with that idea that the presidency is not a New York real estate deal. It is sometimes, but in a very narrow sense. And every other time when it's not like a New York real estate deal, it creates challenges that a president has to meet. And President Trump just refused to accept those challenges.
And just quickly, John, I'm wondering if you could kind of put this into context. This was a president, of course, that spoke a lot of what was on his mind in real time. But what does this mean? What will be the consequence?
I think the consequence is just a different view into the Trump presidency that people didn't get before. And that's valuable because he not only had an exciting presidency of 4 years that challenged the very heart of American democracy, and that has grown past Trump himself. There is now Trumpism, which exists. But he also threatened the office of the presidency in a lot of ways. And as we study former President Trump, we're also studying the presidency and how resilient it may or may not be.
All right, John Dickerson, thank you very much. Excuse my coughing fit at the end here.
That's all right. I do that to lots of people.
And that does it for today. And that does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a reminder, if you want to watch previous episodes of the program, you can see them anytime on the CBS News website. Just head to cbsnews.com/red and blue.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks on the right talk about socialism, it's a boogeyman.
Socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
I think of socialism as government control.
Wealth is too concentrated at the top right now.
Provide